Welcome to Maya training. So typically when you open up the software, this is what you are faced with. Maya is a software that is used for modeling of characters, modeling of products. You can also use it for a little bit of motion graphic, but it's primarily used for character modeling for games, for cartoons, animations, and other small products. Now, Maya is the software that you can see here. It's a modern animation and rendering package for Windows, Linux, and Macintosh. That means we have the versions on Windows, on Linux, and on Macintosh. It's used in a lot of feature films, video games, and television. So Maya will give you a great entry into any of those fields. All right. The important thing to note here is this aspect. It talks about 3D modeling. So whenever you want to do a modeling project or you want to create something, there are some things you need to put in mind. There are some things you need to think about. So, and that will greatly help your process. So, like I said, 3D modeling is used both for entertainment and product design. So we'll keep in mind that 3D modeling is part of a long artistic continuum of sculpture and object design. So, and what I mean by that is when you're dealing with sculpture and object design, it starts from a paper and pencil. So as a 3D modeler or designer, it's helpful to think of these questions before you begin modeling. Now, before you start modeling, you have to think of the who, the what, where, when, and why. And the reason is, if you don't have this in mind, you could spend hours on your software and not create anything meaningful. Okay, so when you think of who, you are saying, who are you designing for? And if you are designing this for storytelling, who is the audience? Okay, if you are designing a product, who will use the product? So that will basically help you to draft out what you want to work on. Then what kind of object are we designing exactly? What is the setting and time period of the object? That's also very important. Is it in the past? Is it in the present? Is it in the future? Because if you don't know the time setting, you may not really know exactly what to create. So, but knowing the time setting, like if it's futuristic, you're going to create something that doesn't exist yet. If it's in the past, you may need to do some research and go and find out how those things looked like in the past and get some reference images. So here you have, where is the location? As in, is it on the ground? Is it on the earth? Is it in the sky? Is it on water or underwater? Or is it out in space? So it could be a purely imagined setting or one based on a historical era. And in that case, visual research can be very helpful to determine the when. As in, when is similar to where, like when, as in what is the era, what's the time era. So when is it, like is it in 1862, is it in 2058, is it in 2020, what year, and stuff like that. Okay. And finally, why is a project important? What kind of purpose or expression does it fulfill? Now, these are the questions that will help you to clarify your creative vision, and it will really, really, really help in reducing your time and projects and time, and knowing your resources that you need for your project. Now we're going into the software. So I gave you a manual, terms commonly used in 3D, and this manual is quite important. It shows you the things that we will be talking about, because while we're in this course, there are some names that I will call out. I'll be using, as in the design world, there are some names that are very common, so you get to hear these names So you don't really need to cram all of them right now, but just use this as a reference. With time you will get used to it. Like you hear me talk about viewports, origin, gizmos, primitives, polygons, NURBS, splines, hypernerves or subdivision surface. You hear mesh, you hear material, light, camera, model, what rig, UV mapping, vertex, the edge, face, topology, shader, and all those names. Baking doesn't have to do with cake right now. Here baking is something different. It's the process of calculating light and shadow information into the 3D geometry or texture of your model. So you bake the light and shadow into the model so it becomes how they interact with each other. We have bones, so you have ambient occlusion science, you have a whole lot of them. So just a few that are going to be very common. So there are other terms, but these ones are the most commonly used. So go through manual, and anytime you hear me mention something, you can always refer back to the manual to find out what I said. Okay. All right. So now, before we start anything, we want to talk about file and project management. When you first of all create or open up your scene, you don't just begin working and adding objects. Now, Maya is a very interactive software. If the objects you create, you don't put them all in one folder. There are times you can open and Maya will not load correctly because it cannot find those things in a particular folder. We usually save our scenes in a particular folder. Save your exported models, your image references, source images, and all those stuff. You're always going to be kept in a folder. So for organization, it's good to learn how to create and store your projects. All right, so when you first launch Maya, you come in here, and this should become a habit for you, and in time you will find out why. Okay, come on to file, then under here we have projects. You have project window, you have set project. For now we are going to use project window because we want to set where we are going to be saving our files to. So normally you can do that from your file explorer and just create a new folder, but this is going to be very good as well. So I clicked on project window, and you see this dialog box that talks about my current project, where it's going to save, and the location of that folder. Then you have some other primary project locations like scenes, templates, images, source images, and a whole lot of them. Now these ones you don't have to individually set them up. Once you set up these two, all these other folders will be created inside of this project. So here I want to set the current project name, so I'll click on new and give it a name. So let's just call this introduction, or any name you want to give it. Okay, I have a folder already called introduction, so let me just give it introduction 1. Then location, where is this file going to be? You can click on this folder to locate where in your system you want to keep it. Right now mine is kept on my desktop in some other folders, so the Maya class. So if you click on this folder, it will open up your files where you can go and look for where you want this major folder to be stored. So right now it's inside the modern folder. Let me go up. So this is my Maya classes folder. So all the specific folders that pertain to all our training are already created here. You can see I have one for animation, for environment, for modeling, for NURBS, for paint effects, polygon class, rendering, shading and texturing, So I want to create the introduction class in here as well. So I'm going to use that as my directory, and I can decide to just click select, and it selects Maya class as the directory. So all I do from here now is just accept, and you come into the project here, you see that let me go to the files. So I have on the Maya work, I have Maya class. You can now see there's a folder called introduction 1, and that folder, when you open up, you see all those other little folders, and it's created this file, Maya script file, this mail, workspace.mel. Now anywhere you save your Maya documents, if this workspace is not there, it will not load. If you try to load the sequence and the folder that you're trying to load it from doesn't have this file, your Maya scenes will not load. So it's very important that this workspace is there. You look at another folder, for instance, you will see it's in all the folders. Any folder that doesn't have it, will not load correctly. It's just that simple. Okay, so the reason why you will use set project is if you relaunch Maya and probably you have a lot of project files, and you're not sure which one it is. Probably the one you are inside is not the one you want to save the file to. So you can come and select a new directory, like introduction 1, let's say, for instance. Let's say I was on something else. Then when I click on that folder, I now set so that whatever I do will save into that particular folder. Okay, so if I wanted to create something that has to do with animation, I can set my directory to the animation folder, so whatever I do at that moment will save into the animation directory. Okay, so I don't need to do this, but let me just set for introduction 1 and click set. So we've not saved the file, we've just created the project. So now this is for organization, like I said, project management. So when you want to save a file, now whatever name you call it, you will save it into the scenes folder of that project directory.